Here we have a 2004 lt40 that has been sitting for 10 years. It hasn't been ran. It was purchased in 2004 from a lovely couple who brought it in to me. We were no longer able to run it and decided to sell and recoup some money out of it. Now it's been sitting for 10 years, hasn't ran, hasn't moved, it's been sitting outside. It looks okay. This mill only has 1,200 hours on it and looks to be in pretty good shape, other than the fact it's just completely seized from sitting outside. It did have an engine cover and a console cover on it, which I'm sure will make all the difference in the world. But we're gonna have to get this thing running, cutting, aligned. All of the other issues that may crop up will have to be addressed. They've pretty much given me free reign to do whatever needs to be replaced. I have no interest in just throwing parts on it that don't need to be replaced, but at the same time I want to make sure that they're happy and the next person buying it will have peace of mind that it's gone through. Like I said, at 1,200 hours, it really doesn't have a whole lot of runtime on it. 1255. It was a pretty bare bones LT40 when purchased, but the nice part about this mill is that it has provisions for pretty much any upgrade that a guy would want to put on it. Debarker, auto clutch, board return if you wanted. Luckily, these mills all had the correct wiring harnesses installed that were universal and could be added onto whatever you wanted. Now it's got the Kohler engine on it, 25 horse, that will have to be gone through from beginning to end to make sure that the old stale fuel that's in it is changed out. The fuel lines are obviously hard and brittle. I'm sure the primer bulb is going to be rock solid, which, yep, it's harder. So far all we've done is they were nice enough to provide me with a new battery, and did seem to power up. I've got it up off of its perch, but you can see we're going to have to go through, and the terminals are completely corroded. I mean, with some minor maintenance and getting everything else tidied up, we're going to see if we can get this thing running and cutting properly after a long slumber. So far, put a new battery in it. The mast was completely rusty enough from sitting outside, so a little emery cloth and WD-40 sanded everything all down into a fine paste, wiped everything all off, and now I've just got automatic transmission fluid eating its way into everything. It does go up and down a lot better now. So the next thing that we're going to do is, after I clean the battery terminals up, luckily there is no fuel in the tank because, well, there isn't a tank with it. We'll have to put that on. But even what's in the fuel filter being 10 years old, there probably won't be any ethanol in it that's going to be separating out. Like, that looks pretty good actually. But with the needle and seat and everything being in here, it could be all gummed up and varnishy. So even to prevent that, on these engines, this little vent tube, we pull this out, goes right into the float bowl. So in order to just preemptively get this thing its best leg up started, we're going to take and fill this up with some carb cleaner and then let that eat while we're getting everything else cleaned up, ready to go, battery terminals cleaned up. So we're going to fill that up. That'll go directly into the float bowl, and we'll let the needle and seat hopefully unseize and get everything back functional again. This will give it its best shot. A good tip to do when you're coming up to an engine that's been sitting for a long time. We'll also change the plugs, at least pull them out and have a look and see if they need to be cleaned up and whatnot. And then we'll go through. See, now she's completely full. So we'll let that cook in there. The other thing that may give us an issue is, if you take this screw off and this screw off, right in behind here is the solenoid that goes in and shuts fuel off and comes back out. We're probably going to have to take this off, and in behind it there's two screws and a single wire that goes up to it, so when you turn the key on, it should retract and allow fuel to get into the carburetor. And when the key goes off, it goes back in and shuts off. That's why a lot of these smaller Kohler engines, when you shut the key off, it runs for another 5-10 seconds. But a lot of times that little plunger will get gummy and it won't go in and out and can cause a lot of issues. So something to keep in mind if you're ever working on a smaller Kohler engine and it won't start and everything else seems good and it'll run. If you put fuel down the intake, it'll run for a second and then die. That little plunger, we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to try and go through and quickly record all of the steps of what it's going to take to see if we can get this thing cutting after 10 years. Cleaning up the terminals, it was definitely worthwhile checking them out. There's a whole ton of corrosion on here, so that side looks pretty good, but the top, everything's all green and grimy. So we'll clean all these up, clean the terminals up, and then we can continue on. So we got those all cleaned up. Look pretty good, all cleaned up. Now we're going to focus our attention to the fuse box right beside the battery box. Have a look and see how everything looks. Now, aside from a lot of grime and whatnot, contacts don't look too bad. We'll go through, oh yeah, look at that. Lovely. Look like a useless wasp nest. That's fun. Oh, look at that. Sweet. My day just got way better. Well, we're going to environmentally get rid of these guys, and then we'll check the fuses. They look pretty dirty and corroded too. We'll clean all that up and see where it carries us next. Okay, we've got her all cleaned out, and as you can see, we've got 12 volts there, 12 volts through that fuse, 12 volts through that fuse, 12 to the block, and we should have 12 volts to one side of the solenoid, which we do. Yeah, looks a lot better. This is everything that washed out of there. Kind of grimy, but now with the key on, sorry about the noise where everyone's working right now, but now you can see with the key on, we've got 12 volts out of the solenoid, 12 volts to that, 12 volts to the trigger side. Yeah, that's all good. Good time while we're also here to have a check at the feed belt. You can see that's loose, but there's still a lot of adjustment left in it. The belt itself being covered and shielded from the sun actually looks like it's still, oh, more bees. Still lots of life left in it, no need to replace that. It still has full width, it's not all chewed up and eaten into the sides of it, so this will be a nice easy one to just simply adjust, get some pressure back on it. And I think next we'll go and we'll check the spark plugs and see what kind of shape they're in. It's a nice simple adjustment. All we need is our 7/16 wrench. Maybe. Hold on. Of course, in my pocket right where it needs to be. So we loosen up these 3 bolts. Slide a pry bar in back. Snug it up. Much better. You can see even after sitting for 10 years, having everything relatively covered. Not really sure if this lived its life all outside, but there's definitely a lot of moss and build up on it because it is, but so far everything comes good. Seems to be moving a little freer and a little freer. We'll have to go through and check the cam follower bearings and see if there's any other. It did roll itself back here under its own power. The chains are all rusty and nasty, but we've got everything soaking in automatic transmission fluid, which does a really good job. That is hands down, dollar for dollar, the cheapest penetrating fluid you'll get is just automatic transmission fluid. You can throw like 10% of acetone or something in there, and it creeps into all the better places where it needs to get into, pretty much better than whatever you're going to buy in the store, and it's like super cheap too. Let's see how these plugs look. Well, but don't look too bad. We'll give them a little clean. Maybe we'll just throw some new ones in. We'll have a look and see. Clean these up a little bit. They still look in really good shape. Just wait for the brake clean to dry. We'll do the other side and we'll get them put back in. Actually, we won't. We'll leave the spark plugs out when we're trying to crank it and just see how things go. Same story on this side here. We'll just pop this out really quick. Same story, lots of carbon. Doesn't look like anyone's tried to throw gas down it or anything else like that. Mind you, I know it's been sitting for 10 years, but overall they look pretty good. So we'll clean this one up, same as the other side. It's actually pretty amazing. This has 10-year-old fuel in it, and you can tell there wasn't as much ethanol around in fuel as there was back then. But look at that, it's crystal clear. There's no water sitting on top of it. No, overall looks pretty good. This fuel line is completely shot. You can see that she's split right here. So what we're going to do just for now, we'll replace it, but I'm just going to cut this off, drain this fuel out of here so that it doesn't try and draw anything in. Even though it looks okay, I don't want to get anything else into the fuel system for now. Well, let's crank this over and see what happens. Everything's getting lots of voltage, nothing come out of the cylinders. Yeah, that's actually quite good. So I think we'll throw the plugs back in and see how lucky we get from there. So I think what we'll do, I got the plugs back in. I'm going to throw a little bit of extra carbon choke cleaner. This is nice and flammable. I mean, I know shouldn't really be using this to start it, but we just want to see if she lights off. The oil is clean. There's no water in it. Actually, it's quite clean, believe it or not. Just old, but let's just see. I want to see if it's even going to flash up. She barks off. Okay. Oh, that's wonderful. That's awesome. Good enough for me. Now we need a fuel tank to place some fuel line. And once we get her warmed up, we'll drain the oil, change it anyway, still a new oil filter on it and a new fuel filter. And yeah, that's really cool. And we can check charging and so on and so forth. I think everything's going to be fine. It's just a matter of getting it back up and running and warmed up and stuff and watch it come back to life. So a lot of people don't know this. They always struggle. I see a lot of posts online about people that say, I've got fresh fuel, I got fresh spark plugs, and the thing won't start unless I dump fuel down the carburetor, which is can be frustrating. But what happens is, right in behind, if you just take this plate off, is the fuel shutoff solenoid. We had talked about this earlier. It's right here. There's only a screw here and a screw on the other side that hold it in. And then there's one power lead that goes to it. It grounds itself through the block as it's threaded in. So as the key comes on, this solenoid has a plunger which should retract, allow fuel to go in for starting, and then when you turn it back off, it goes in, shuts fuel off. And what happens is that little plunger just gets gummed up. It can get, crud, sediment, whatever in there. So we're going to pull this one out and clean it all off just preemptively so that we don't have to worry about it later on if we're having issues. We know that this is clean. So I'll pull it out and you guys can have a look. Good magnetic screwdriver. It's worth its weight in gold. So nice to work with. So there it is out. You will have to take off the shroud bolts just to rock that part a little bit in order for it to come out. Doesn't need to be much, but you can see that that is absolutely filthy. So it's a good thing we did this. So all we're going to do is just get some carb cleaner in here, spray all this out, spray the orifice that it goes into, make sure there's no residual stuff in here. Then we can ground this out somewhere, and then you should see this retract, go in and out. You can just see it's just all the orifices here are just plugged full of crapola. So once we ground this out, we can turn the key on and off and make sure that it's functioning. We'll stick it back in. Let's clean her up. So the outside's cleaned up. The O-ring's actually looking really, really good shape. We got as much crud out of the plunger hole as possible. Now it's important to take this off, and this is actually the part that goes inside and blocks fuel off as the key goes on and off. So now we can take that out, clean all the rust and stuff off of this, and then we'll check and see how everything works. See, this is much cleaner now. We'll do a little bit more, but you can see now all the orifices are clean and fuel will be allowed to pass through. Okay, now we've got this cleaned up. The main power wire is still attached to it. The key is in the on position, so when I ground this out to here, you'll see this go in and out. It doesn't look like very much, but that's all it really takes. And that's what this little needle shuts off fuel to the engine. Turn it on, it retracts, and when it shuts off, it goes in and blocks off fuel. So if you're ever having an issue, this is really something that's overlooked and should be checked. Reassembled with the plunger on, you can see now that it opens and closes, if it would focus. You can get the idea. She's working just fine. Throw the two hold down screws back in. Tighten up your shroud bolts, and this area of things is good to go. We'll figure out what we're going to do next. That's back together. I think what we're going to do now is take off the up-down motor cover side, and then we'll have a look and see what's living under there. So overall, everything looks pretty good. The up-down belt's obviously really loose, but again, the belt's in good shape. It's just been probably at 1,200 hours, it was just probably never adjusted. So there's lots of life left in it, lots of adjustment left. So we'll have to go through and clean everything all up, probably readjust the brake strap and everything. There's a tiny little wear mark in here. We'll look at the belt on the other side. If she's all chewed up, we'll replace that too. But actually looks pretty good. There's no indentation on the side from it slipping or rubbing or anything like that, so that's what we're doing. Anyways, we're going to adjust things, but the turnbuckle is the first encounter of seized bolts that we've come across, which is going to be pretty common. I think I've been lucky so far. But take it out, throw it in the vise, throw some heat in it. Now the heim joints are all free, so now we're going to take it all apart completely, never seize everything, reassemble it, polish up this burn mark on here. Then we'll throw it back in and go through a belt adjustment. So we got that all wire wheeled up, got never seized all over everything, so we'll thread it all back together and throw it in. Went through and greased all the pivot points in the shoulders and everywhere that it pivots. Got these all freed up, and we'll adjust this. I think I've got it pretty good, but now pulls really nice, and willing to bet that that's damn near perfect. We'll get the gauge and we'll have a look and see how it's adjusted. So this is going to be a little tough to show you, but you'll get the gist of it. You can look up the actual belt spec tension for your engine if this would focus. If you've ever seen one of these, if you got it, it's new with your mill, if you pick one up, it's just a very simple belt tension gauge. For this 25 horse engine, we want to be at 15 pounds on the plunger side and 7/16 of an inch on the other side. So you'd put this O-ring at 7/16, this one at 14 on the plunger side. The G38s are 17, but same thing, about 1/4 to 7/16 deflection. The newer mills with the throat cover on it, they've got a little access panel here you can take off, and you would put this in the center of the belt and push until this O-ring here goes flush to the body of the tool, and then measure how much deflection. Once this measures about 7/16 of an inch through the pass-through hole, you would push until it was flush. I'm going to try and show you here. I've got a makeshift straight edge here. This is already set, so what we're going to do is put this here and push until that top O-ring comes flush with our straight edge, and hopefully when we get down to here, that's actually pretty good. It's pretty much flush. 7/16 of an inch deflection on the belt at 14 pounds. This is good to go. But ideally, it's much easier to do with the new style one that has a little removable access panel, and all you would do is just set it at your manual. Will give you the specs. If not, call your local Wood-Mizer dealer. They can look it up in a second for you. And how much deflection and the amount of pounds force applied will be this O-ring here. It's a very simple tool, but what you do not want to do is run that belt too tight. Well, too loose either. If it's too tight, you're going to take the crankshaft bearings out of the engine because they're not designed for that much side thrust load, so it's very important. Oh, you can't see the covers on, but you really should follow that recommendation. Your Wood-Mizer dealer should be able to give you that. Now, adversely, if it gets too low and you haven't adjusted it, then when you're sawing, you should hear two things when you're sawing. You should hear the engine RPM and the blade sound as it's going through the log. When you really lean on it, if you hear the blade speed slowing down, but the engine RPM isn't, you'll almost get a smell of burnt rubber as you're going through. It'll cause you all kinds of grief cutting because the blade is going to overload the gullets. It's going to be slowing down, and you'll start to back it up and it'll porpoise through the log. So having a tight dry belt is one of the key steps in making sure that you're not going to cut wavy boards. Yeah, so call, get the specs, use the tool. And basically though, if you engage it with the engine running, and this one here is a manual pull down, but if you hit the auto clutch or anything else like that, you should hear a nice chirp. That's really normal and common on these engines to hear that burp sound when you hit it. If it's too tight and you don't hear that, you might want to readjust your brake and your belt tension as well too. I've replaced a few engines with people that have over tightened it thinking, I don't know what they were thinking, but they come in and it's taken the front crankshaft seal out and it's pissing oil everywhere out of it. And this is a very expensive thing. So really pay attention to your dry belt, and when you get a new mill or you put a new dry belt on, you'll install it to the correct spec, and after about 50 to 75 hours you want to go through, and when that belt has had its initial break-in, you'll want to go through and double check this again. So this one's good to go. We'll throw everything back together and we'll carry on. Oh, and one more thing, once you've got this adjusted up, don't forget to tighten up your jam nut so that that doesn't come loose. So there she is, all locked up, ready to go. Everything's tightened up, cleaned up. That should take care of all of that for now. I think the next step is I'm pretty much done for today. I have to get a fuel tank. I'll get that out tonight, and then tomorrow I think we'll get some new fuel line, get this all shortened up, a new fuel filter, and we know it runs, but then we'll have to get everything primed, and then we'll actually get this thing fired up and see how it runs. We'll see you then. Well, it's a new day. I got updates. Went through last night, hooked up fuel system, new filter. Wrote the hours down on the filter just so that the next guy knows what's going on. When to change things. Got a new jerry can. We'll have to fill her up with gas, but basically that's hooked up and ready to go, so we can flash that off. But having a better look at things yesterday, like I said, this mill sat for a long time, and with the engine cover on, it was still in pretty good shape. But you can notice this last night here, main drive bearing, something's chewed at this and all the oils come out, so I'm gonna have to replace that. Now the bearing itself actually feels pretty good still. You pull down on the lever to take the brake off, and you can spin it like there's no play or anything in it, and it does sound pretty good. But the idle side is a different story. You'll see from the back side here, the seal, I don't know what's going on there. It just looks like she's dried up, but when you spin this, it sounds, may not pick it up on camera, but it feels like an old cement mixer. It's very audible, and just the vibration coming from it, you can feel every little divot in the race housing on the inside. It's gonna need to be replaced because it just sounds like garbage. Bearing of that, with resonating that bad, it's gonna be another reason why you'll be cracking bands. If you do crack a band and you take it, bend it in the sunlight, and if you look down, and all the little gullets have fractures in them, it's usually a bad bearing in either here or the guide rollers or something like that. The guide rollers themselves, while they do feel okay, there is side to side play in these pretty bad. Same with the other one, so we'll end up having it. The bearing, or the guide roller itself, is actually pretty good. There's no flat spots or anything, so we'll throw a rebuild kit in these. We'll do both of them and see how that goes. There's a bunch more unwanted guests in the mill too. Got rid of all of them. They were all packed in here. They're yellow jackets. They're just nasty. So anyways, we got our work cut out for us today. That's about all I really noticed often. Oh, the guide arm in and out motor doesn't work either. Absolutely nothing going to it. We do have power at the switch. The key is on right now. And the main power wire back here, she's got 12 volts, but when you move the selector switch either way, it shows power here and it shows power on the other one depending on which direction you're going. So it's either going to be somewhere in the motor, so we'll have to pull. If you want to know where this is at, most of these mills have a little join somewhere in this area here. If you go up and feel it, you usually feel the male female spade connectors here. In this instance, it's up here. So we're going to pull the sheathing back. We'll check to make sure we have power here, and if there's power here, we'll go to the motor, and maybe we have some brushes that are hung up. Maybe we'll give her a few smacks, see if it goes, but at the end of the day, we'll have to figure out what's going on. So we'll go. Second thought, I want to kind of see if this engine runs. Primed the primer ball, got fuel up to the filter. It's going to take a bit to get it in there, obviously, but let's just see what happens. it up, but actually it seems to run pretty good. Give it a couple of revs now. See how it goes. Well, it actually runs really, really good, but this had to come back out again because lo and behold, I went to shut it off and it wouldn't shut off. So taking this back out, you can kind of see right here where all of that rust and debris was sitting on the end of it there. You can see it's all smooth right here, right on the tip there, but when I rotate this over a little bit, you can see how worn out that is. It's eaten right down, so when it goes on the inside of the plunger, inside of this here, it's not shutting the fuel off because it's just worn down from all that rust and crap that was sitting in there prior to it. You really see it there. She's completely destroyed. So unfortunately, well, it's not unfortunate. I'm just going to order another one and we'll get that placed up. But this can be the cause, whether it's got debris sitting in the end of this so it doesn't create a seal and lets fuel leak by. Usually the cause of when you go to shut it off and it doesn't shut off, that's something to look for. And the part's super, super cheap. It's about 26 bucks. I think I just ordered it, and it's just a one single wire plug-in right here. Unplug it, throw the new one on, and we'll go. Well, the part's ordered for the engine. It runs really nice. Super, super happy about that. I think what we'll do now is focus our efforts on changing this bearing out, and most people are going to come across this where this is just seized in here, this little tapered bolt. It's really common to have to go through and fight with this, and the last thing you want to do is strip this out because it's only a little Allen head that fits in there. So we'll give her a shot. I did spray this last night before I went home, but I don't have very high hopes. Nope. Have to get the gas axe out, warm this up just around the outside here, and it'll expand it, and we'll try and get that out. I think they also throw a little Loctite on that from the factory too, but we'll get the torch and we'll carry on. Nice gentle heat right around the outside. I'm not worried about the bearing obviously because they're going to replace it. And hopefully that'll be enough to break the seal, and we'll try getting this off. There we go. And that's going to be hot. Wondrous. Well, that was fun. What had happened was just sitting, the rear seal had popped out and moisture and water had been getting into the bearing race. That's why it was all rusty on the inside. Yeah, that was fun. So I've got the Pound 'em Out 3000 here. This is just wide enough to fit in the back side here. If you wiggle that in, it fits in just like so. And then you can hit it from the back side. It won't hit the casting of the wheel, but if you get this just right, it'll go in and hit just where the bearing, outer bearing race is, and you can do it from both sides if you position this just right. You can get it from this side, slide that out, and then you can get it from this side here, and then it wiggles it right off the shaft. And it's quite easy to do. You can horse around, take this cover plate off and make more work than you have to, but this works really, really well. You just 100% do not want to hit the inner casting of the wheel, obviously, because she'll crack and then you're in for a nightmare. But yeah, this just fits in. You catch the inner race. As long as you're hitting where that clip is there, if you're hitting right on the inside there, you're completely fine. And this works really good. Get yourself a 3-4 pound hammer, work it side to side, push this in and out, she'll come right off. You just need somebody on the back side to catch the wheel when it comes out. So now we're going to go press a bearing in. So I don't have a press or anything to do this. So what I've got is just a larger piece of pipe that fits just right on the ring of the rim right here. Set that on top, center it, Then this piece here just fits on the inner race of the bearing. Precise pounder. And then we'll just give her what she needs. Make sure it's still centered. Usually it comes out pretty nice. Then, before I throw the new one in, I'll take a little bit of greaser, clean all this all up, and then usually put a little thin film of Never Sees in there because I put it on everything, and clean the gland out where the snap ring goes into, and then we'll reinsert. So she's all cleaned out. We've got some good copper coat. Never Sees. Little film. New bearing. Gently lay it in there. Get her as square as you can. Then gently work it down. When it gets flush, good idea to use the old bearing. Tone changes, you can hear it's bottomed out. Double check on the back side, it's all the way down. We've got the snap ring, throw her in. And reinstalling this, make sure you can see that that has a bit of a taper to it. The taper goes up and the flat side goes towards the bearing itself, and that'll wedge itself in tight. Good set of snap ring pliers really helps too. Like that. I always take a flat screwdriver and just knock the highest end point back to really make sure that it's seated. Good to go. The stub shaft is already cleaned off. We'll put a little wipe of Never Sees on the stub shaft of the mill just for future replacements. It sure makes life a lot easier. To reinstall, we're going to throw a little Never Sees on the stub shaft. A little tiny bit of the cap screw goes in here. Reinstall the wheel with the snap ring towards the back. Fancy washer back on. Nope. Usually when I do this, I'll throw just a dab of blue Loctite on here, just a tiny bit. Definitely don't want that backing off. Clean that off. Leave a witness mark on it. That's it. Much better. No sound, no vibration, smooth and buttery, just like it should be. Now we should probably go over to the drive side, replace that hose, fill it with ATF, see how that side feels. Like I said, the bearing does feel really good. It's just, there's no play, there's no in and out, the wheel doesn't wobble side to side. It actually feels really smooth, but sitting for so long, I believe rats or something in here got it, chewed it apart. All the oil is gone out of it. So I'm gonna start off by just replacing this hose, filling it up with ATF, and then should be able to get her fired up and then see how it feels. If it's any noise or if it feels smooth, we'll leave it. If not, we may have to replace this bearing, which will be a fun job, but it is what it is. New hose installed. We'll fill her up. Usually I just keep a 1 liter jug of ATF with a squirt trigger on it. It's really handy. Just stick it in here and fill it up until we see the oil sight line up with the sticker. This will take a bit. Periodically just stand it up, wait for the oil level to balance off. Still got a ways to go. I'll just pause this for a sec. Yeah, I think we got her good. Just check her there. The oil level should be right where it needs to be on the sticker. Fill this back on the top. Throw a hose clamp on. We'll see how this feels. Well, been waiting for that fan to turn off over there, but it just seems like it's not going to. You'll just have to take my word for it. This is absolutely buttery smooth now. There's no vibration, no gross feel to it. It's just super buttery, and everything seems like it's really good. The cooling fan on the fancy machine over there, maybe we'll take a look at that a bit later on. This video is already going to be ridiculously long, and for the 3.5 of you that are still watching, I really appreciate it. It's just fun to make these videos, and also a lot of the times it's just easier to pass along a video to illustrate to somebody how to do something versus explaining it to them over the phone. They can watch it, pause it, do what I'm doing on there. It just saves a lot of the most common questions that are asked daily. I just send them a video and watch it. So if you are watching, thank you very much. So next we're going to delve into why this guide arm in and out motor doesn't work. We've got power actually through the switch. I'm just going to take this up right now and see if I have power up at the spade connectors. Pre-loosened all these off. Thankfully they all came out. Rust is going to be a huge issue on this while I'm sitting here thinking that what I might do is just make this a 2-part video. So I've still got a ton of work to do, and the fuel shutoff solenoid won't be here until, this is already cut through anyways. The fuel shutoff solenoid won't be here until Saturday, and today is Tuesday. So I'll wait and see. I may upload the half of this. I know most people don't like 2-part videos, unless you're Derek Fury from Pipe Strip Garage or something like that, which is kind of the inspiration for doing this. Just the fact that I really enjoy watching the bullet run videos and so on and so forth. But this is just something different. I've never seen one like this before, so I thought, well, you know, if there's a half a dozen people that end up watching this, that's fine. I'm not doing it for financial gain or anything like that. Like I said, if anything, it's just nice to be able to pass this along so somebody else can watch this, and covering most of the most frequently asked questions and little things like, you know, guide arm in and out, Justin, which I already do have the video for. It's sure nice to be able to just send that along to somebody and then they can watch it at their own pace and pause the phone and do it at their leisure. So what we're going to do is just check and see if we've got voltage to here, and if we don't, then we'll go see where it is and where it isn't. So I can't do this with both hands, but you guys can see voltmeter. I'm just going to go hit the toggle switch and see if we got 12 volts. Oh, I can't see it. I thought we got nothing. It's coming from the switch. Make sure we have a good connection here. Nothing. Let's delve into this a bit further. Well, this is interesting. When you flick the toggle switch, you're just swapping the ground and the positive back and forth to send the current to send the motor out, or the current to go for the motor in. If I go between them and activate it, I get nothing. But if I ground this out over here and I activate the switch, I get 12 volts. But if I try and do it through these two and then activate it, I get nothing. So it's either the switch, the ground is no good, or it could be in the wire. It's more than likely going to be in the switch, but it's usually a good place to tell. Yeah. Swapping over to the other lead, I get the same thing. I pull it in the opposite direction, I get 12 volts there. But if I try and use the ground that's being swapped through the toggle switch, almost there for a second. I think it's just that toggle switch, the inside contacts is ringing. So now I'm getting contact more. I've wiggled it back and forth. That's the thing, man. These things sit outside and everything just corrodes. So while I know I've got voltage, let's plug this back in and see if we can get this to work now. Nothing. At least I know I got 12 volts going to the motor. I have to take this apart and see how the motor is with no load on it. It could just be all seized and bound in there. Let's pop this cover off. So probed into the wires here, they're pretty much broken anyways, but I'm getting really weird voltage. It's better now that I've cleaned everything up. The switch does seem to be working, but what I think I'm going to do is a little cheat. So yeah, I'm just cheating a little bit. I just went and grabbed the new motor and threw on some temporary plugins. These are all corroded and the plastic's all brittle and everything anyway, so got her plugged in, and this is just going to cut my diagnosis time in half. The switch, it seems to be getting better, but let's just give it a try. Oh yeah. Very nice. So we know we got a motor that's been sitting and is all seized up. It's a lot of the problems with these things here is they sit outside. A lot of them usually will have the rubber boot that sits on top and does stop all the weather from getting in, but you can even see this is all janky, so water will get in here, and over time the freeze, the thaw over the winter time, the magnets come loose. I mean, there's any number of things that can go wrong, but anyways, we're into it for a new beer motor. I think I'm going to call this halfway point here done. I know it's going to be a long video, but it is what it is. I still am just doing this for my own personal enjoyment. If you guys like it, let me know. But we will do a follow-up video regardless, and see the conclusion of how this thing turns out. I think it's going to be just fine, but let me just pop the phone out. It's going to be fun to see this thing back cutting again after its long slumber here, but hopefully you guys will enjoy it. We'll make a part 2 regardless. Anyways, thanks for watching, and take care, and hopefully we'll see you soon.